Thank you very much.
Ladies, gentlemen, welcome back to Berlin Global Dialogue. Like I said, it's been very quiet in trade lately. Nothing has been happening. It's not been in the news at all. So we thought we might bring all of you in here to tell us what's happening in your respective industries, from policy, from business, and from your respective perches around the world. Obviously, tariffs has been everything we've been covering in the news this past, 9 months, 10 months? And so the world trade system, as we know it, is getting thrown away. So shall we start easy? Renee, it seems like a good place to begin. How are you thinking about trade now that everything that we have known for decades has been thrown away in the era of tariffs, in the era of protectionism, in the era of you need me, I don't need you?
I think it's still an illusion to when people talk about decoupling, because the world is so interconnected and supply chains are so interconnected that a real decoupling is hard to imagine, if not impossible. But I do believe in building leverage to have, leverage for negotiations and to establish mutual dependencies. But the truth is, nothing is plannable anymore. So strategies have to be much more, adaptable and flexible. We can't, do something and then pursue it for the next 10 years, believing things are stable. So it's about building leverage and then gradually having more redundant elements in the supply chain, which, for instance, in the case of aerospace, it's not so trivial. Also because it's a small number of planes which gets produced, so you don't have for each component which is certified and expensive a zillion number of suppliers from all different countries. So it's a fine balance we're currently walking on, but so far we managed quite well.
I think you're understating the scale of this problem. Because a plane is a small number of planes get made, but these components are made all over the place.
I said exactly that. I didn't understate it. It's a very complex issue. And again, I don't think that a complete decoupling is a strategy. De-risking over time is possible. We've proven that we can minimize some of the dependencies in some raw materials, for instance. We can find new suppliers, but it took some time. It didn't go overnight.
Okay. Let's check in with Emma, because you're in steel, and we need this for almost everything around us.
I agree.
Nice setup.
Anything to sell?
Do you have anything to sell at all? Okay, so how are you thinking about an era of tariffs where you have to move from one country to another, from one geography to another, where different rules are coming into effect?
Yeah. First of all, let me say that Mr. Trump is, in a certain sense, obsessed by steel, because already in 2018, when he came in, so the first Trump, he put tariffs by 25% on steel, and now, as you know, it's 50%. And what is also happening is that we are going through the energy transition, and steel, as you know, automotive and other sector are very affected by that. And so, the policy of the European Union has been to go with very strong target, right. minus 40% minus 90% by 2030 of the emission. I would say also in a kind of ideological way, we are the only one to have, targets that are straight. At the beginning, we didn't have a real technology neutrality, which is what we meant. So what happened is that the Commission decided to put starting from the 1st of January 2026, the CBAM. That is a kind of extra cost that if you import steel from outside, you have to pay, and is linked to the CO2 emission embedded. So we also have this part. As always, when you have this kind of situation, there is uncertainty, there is more bureaucracy. So CBAM is good, but is another kind of burden. So what we decided to do as company, before we were only in the processor still, we decided to invest upstream. So we partially, so we are not completely fully integrated now, but we are, upstream for, we will be autonomous in our production of the raw material for 35–40%, and we are doing in UK and in France, and this helps us both on the protectionism protectionism, because now to import from all over the world like we used to do before is very difficult, and also for the CO2, of course. So we are now producing with an electrical furnace, so the CO2 emissions are lower. So first we are going upstream, and this is what we're doing. And second, of course, we are also diversifying our sources of raw material. We try to be as agile as possible, because every day there is a change. Maybe it's 50%, tomorrow maybe it's 40 or 60, we don't know. So you have to be very agile and also try to be very open also to opportunities that can come even in this disruptive situation.
So you knew this was coming when President Trump got re-elected, because you had the precursor in 2018. Were you, as the kids say, freaking out because you knew this could have a massive change in your business overnight?
Exactly. So that's why we decided to go before. So yes, already in 2018 we saw this, and already, you know, with this 25% of tariffs, our export to the United States went down. It was not very, important, but they went down. And so we understood also at that moment, you know, also the European Commission put some safeguard measure limiting the import. So we understood that the world was changing, and so we decided to do this movement in upstream, and I think this is the right move to be done.
Okay, I'll come back to that in a moment, but Ola, you're sort of in the same situation with René, which is that you probably look at the news and you're just like pulling out your hair. Are you deeply concerned about the state of things, or are you reasonably optimistic?
Well, we're the second biggest customers to these friends over here next to the construction industry, so thank you for being around. We need you guys.
Now more than ever.
Now more than ever, but if we look at what's happening now, here we're sitting in Berlin this morning. Everybody knows that one of the strengths of Germany has been an export champion. Yeah, it's been a badge of honor, and a company like Mercedes-Benz, the automotive industry, we're like a mirror of that business model and have benefited greatly over the decades from markets opening up. And now we find ourselves in an era with more protectionism creeping back in. And it's not like it just happened in the last 6 months. The last 6 months have been disruptive, but this is a process that we have seen over the last 7, 8 years, I would say, in different shapes or forms. And I would start by saying I completely agree with what René said. If we think that we're going to kind of decouple ourselves, that is a complete illusion. If you take a modern high-tech car from Mercedes-Benz, all 5 continents are in that car. All 5 continents are in that car. So there's no such thing as a fully European car, fully Chinese car, fully American car. The whole world is in the car. You can create some redundancies, second sourcing, and do this, that, the other. I would call it risk management. Yeah. But if you think that you can retreat back into a fortress, you are living in an illusion. Because there's a reason why 5 continents are in a car, and it's called market economy and the invisible hand of the market. It is the economical optimum. If politicians, for whatever reason, decide to put in distortions into that economic optimum, the first thing that happens is it gets more expensive, which is what you're trying to fight. Now, we have to live with the reality that we're in. The United States has changed the paradigm. It is what it is. Would I have liked it to be different? Of course I would, but we have to deal with it as best we can and find whatever is the best new equilibrium. But while we do that, let's seek more new opportunities on top of the 3 dominating markets, of course, North American economy, European economy, and Chinese economy. And I'm sitting next to this fine gentleman here. We spoke yesterday, a small country with a population that should be paid attention to. And even if the car market for us is not yet in India on the level of, let's say, a Germany or UK or whatever, what is it going to look like 10 years from now? So if pressured by the big guys, let's see if we can find complementary new partnerships, and maybe this can be a spark for a new opening up in other directions.
In this era of protectionism, do you consider it an existential crisis for your business if this trend continues and all of the big markets start to close off?
It depends on the definition of existential. but when...
Good thing we have an English guy here.
Yeah, when...
I'm not English,
when,
I'm Welsh. This is a very important distinction.
I knew he would say that.
When you look at the business model of a car company or many industrial companies, on Liberation Day, or actually 5 days before Liberation Day, 27.5% tariffs were actually implemented between the EU and the United States.
Right.
Mercedes being the individually biggest exporter from the EU to the United States, you do pay attention. And if you take an industrial business, do the math in 20 seconds for you, 100 units of revenue, if you're a really good company, 10 units of profit, let's say 10%, a cost of goods sold at 75 units, add 27.5% to the 75 units, then you understand what happens to the 10.
Right.
So you could say that it is existential. At 15 is bad, at 25, it's 27.5, it's prohibitive. So the math matters.
Right.
And industrial structures in highly sophisticated, complicated business like the machines that we build is not that something that you switch over overnight or in 6 months or something. Those industrial structures, it takes years to switch them over, and they have been in the making for decades. So it is really something that affects the business, yes.
All right. At least one minister is in a good position, Chris, because you did a trade deal with the United States.
Oh, and India.
And India too.
Yes.
But I want to start
I was going to do India first.
I wanted to come to him last because even though we've been paying a lot of attention over the last 9 months to what the United States is doing, but India was already doing this before it was mainstream. You were doing this kind of unique trade deals.
Well, we recognized many years ago that we have to integrate with global markets. If we have to become a developed nation, living in isolation isn't going to do us any good. And COVID was another opportunity where everybody could reflect on how we can expand relations with trusted partners. And I remember earlier on we used to do trade deals with countries which were really competitors to India. 21, we sat down and looked at our trading arrangements, and we realized that it'll be good to integrate with developed countries, with advanced economies. That would help us in our own development priorities or imperatives, help us get technology, help us get investments, open our markets as well as open other markets to Indian products, also improve our efficiency, our operations. And therefore, around 21, we got into negotiations with 5 or 6 important countries around the world, with the UAE, Australia, the UK, EU. And this was a process which really had started 20 years ago, but around 2005-06, but could never reach end conclusion. 21, we started with a new open mind, with a new way of thinking. We quickly wrapped up deals with the UAE, with Australia, with the 4-nation EFTA bloc, Switzerland, Norway, Liechtenstein, and Iceland, with UK in July this year. We're in active dialogue with the EU. If we get a fair deal, if we get an equitable and a balanced deal, maybe that will happen.
He's negotiating now.
And we are talking to the United States, of course, but we don't do deals in a hurry. And we don't do deals with deadlines or with a gun on our head.
But that's how deals are done these days. It's a deadline.
I don't think so.
Tariffs come in midnight on this date. Take it or leave it.
India looks long term. India never takes decisions in a rush or on the pressure of the moment. And we've accepted if there's a tariff on us, there is a tariff on us. We're looking how to overcome that. We're looking at newer markets. We're looking at a stronger demand impetus within the Indian economy. So we have a very resilient structure, 1.4 billion people, young, Our average age is 28.5 years. Very aspirational. 1 billion internet users connected to what's happening at the Berlin Global Dialogue, aspiring for a better quality of life for their families. So they are not in a situation where they want to do suboptimal deals. We'd like to really look at the long term. We recognize that 20, 25 years from now, we'll be a $30 trillion economy. And accordingly, we will negotiate based on the future. A trade deal is on the long run.
Right.
And we have to recognize the future and get the best deal for the country.
How do you get that fair trade deal that is long-term looking in an era where you have a gun to your head, you have a deadline, you have to do it quickly because there will be major impacts? And there are also geopolitical concerns. If you don't stop buying this from this other country, then no, you won't do a deal with us.
Well, I don't think India has ever decided who its friends will be based on any other considerations other than national interest. And I think if
So plainly, you want to be told that you can't be friends with Russia.
Somebody tells me tomorrow I can't be friends with the European Union, I won't accept that. Or somebody tells me tomorrow I can't work with Kenya, it's not acceptable to me. So I think we are all in it together. The decision whether to buy a particular product from a country is something that the entire world will have to take a call on. So I was reading in today's paper, Germany is asking for exemption from US sanctions on oil. Now these are UK already has sorted and probably got an exemption for procuring oil
No.
from the US.
This is about the Rosneft deal, sanctions,
right.
I think, and we've sorted out the issues with Germany. We managed to do that very quickly, and I think the Americans will do something very similar.
So then why single out India?
Well, it's a specific subsidiary in relation to Rosneft.
We also have a subsidiary in India of the Rosneft.
Well, come and talk to us. My door is always open. Look, the only thing I'd say about speed is the world it's just a fact that we're interconnected now. We all tend to talk about goods when in trade, and lots of trade negotiations get a bit obsessed with goods, and sometimes it feels like it's the economies of 50 or 100 years ago rather than the economies of the next 50 or 100 years. And I want to go, if somebody's creating, for instance, a new video game, which will be if it's going to be a AAA game, it'll be a multi-billion pound investment across 15 years at least. Of course they're going to think about all the markets in the world,
right,
because they're going to be selling it digitally around the world. So what does trade look like in that environment? And of course for us in the UK financial services, that's a really important part of what we are able to offer to the world. I think still is a very important financial hub in the UK. The advantage of being close to the United States but not being the United States. Close to the European Union, but unfortunately not members of the European Union, and I think that places us in a fairly unique position. But we can't hang around on deals. I was in Buenos Aires in Brasilia a couple of weeks ago, and we're looking at the Mercosur situation and how we could perhaps open negotiations with them. The EU took 25 years. That's madness in an era of rapid interconnectedness.
Indeed.
So, of course, I agree. I don't want false deadlines for deals, but we do need to work faster. And if there's one thing that Donald Trump has persuaded us, it is, come on, let's get on with it. Let's not hang around. And sometimes I think it is true, as has been referred to, that if you looked at the world 15 years ago, the world of trade and liberalization was growing, and now it feels as if that space has narrowed and narrowed for all sorts of reasons within individual countries. But actually, people in every country in the world listen to K-pop now. and they would, or to Kenyan music for that matter, or Nigerian, or whatever. Places that never had an opportunity to have a world audience now do. And we as politicians need to embrace that, not to run away from it.
Okay, so you defended speed, and part of that is because, as you said, no longer members of the European Union. So the UK has had to learn how to do these deals quickly.
Yeah.
But not at the pace that Donald Trump wants them done, which is overnight. For a big country like India, it's not possible. You are lucky to get at the front of the queue, but
not
every
lucky,
other country...
we worked hard. These things do not happen by luck. They don't happen by luck.
But you have a special relationship. Every other country has to get in the queue, and the queue is 200 countries long. So it takes a long time to even get prioritized.
No, indeed, and of course, I mean, but some ideas have been around for a long time and never been actioned. In relation to steel, for instance, I'm a Welsh MP. Next door to me is Port Talbot. The steel is a very important part of any developed economy, as in any other economy. You need it for defence. You need it for your own sovereign capability and for security. and so, of course, you don't want cheap steel dumped on you by others where it's been heavily subsidized unfairly, because the whole aim is to have free and fair trade. Sure. And just as you don't want forced labor in the supply chain, you need to address all of these issues. And of course, you've got to look at critical minerals and all of that. But so we in the UK, we've got to look at what the EU's just announced in relation to steel. But I don't think the UK is the problem for the EU in relation to steel. I don't think we're the problem for the United States of America either, and I don't think the EU is the problem for the United States either. So there must be a rational position, and sometimes we just need to bash heads together. But again, I'm in favour of doing these things swiftly. We can talk to each other every single day of the week. I'm very hopeful that we might come to a deal with the GCC over the next few days, and again, that's a deal that people have been trying to achieve for some period of time. I don't set false deadlines, but I mean, come on, we're just. I've only got one life. And how many of us just want to have these endless conversations where everybody's defending their own little corner of the world? And the world is bigger and our humanity is bigger.
That is brilliant. Emma, do you feel like you're dumping cheap steel in some markets, that therefore those markets trying to protect themselves?
Yeah, of course, as I said before, until, let's say, 6-7 years ago, as I said, there was full globalization, full, market were open, and to be honest, probably Europe was more or the less protected, let's say, market. What happened is that, for sure, China, which is a great place, and I agree that we cannot decoupling with, compare with China. But China started to have a kind of overcapacity in not only steel, but for sure in steel. Not only let's say, low quality steel, but also high quality steel. And yes, there was a lot of, steel coming to Europe, and it was a kind of dumping there. And then this situation got even worse when the U.S. decided already in 2018, and now even more in 2025, to stop, completely. They were to put, very high, tariffs. So yes, there is a kind of, of dumping. But as we all are saying, I'm a fully believer of, of free market. Anti-dumping has to come. If you really believe in free market, has to come when you have, subsidized, imports, when you have, state-owned company that come to your market and disrupt the market. But you cannot have, a weaponized, trade where you say, no, for national security, steel cannot be export to the United States. Why? Or, I don't know, I don't like Bolsonaro, so you have very high, very high duties. So I think you need some, instruments if there is real anti-dumping, but market has to, to be as free as possible.
Right.
Of course, we are now in a situation we cannot be naive, and we cannot see that we have war, that the multilateral system is in trouble, that the United States, I agree with the minister, has done this, has this decision to put tariffs so high. So I think we have to strike a new balance now between market that has to be free to stay open, and on the other hand, we need anyway to some protection is needed, because if you have dumped products, or you have also to think about some security. So we cannot depend completely, from China or from other. Of course, I agree that we cannot be independent on anything, because it doesn't exist. It's a nonsense. This will not happen. But so I think we have to strike a new balance between new open market that has to stay, and some security, autonomy that has to be there, but without closing completely the market, because this will be very strongly detrimental to companies, but at the end also to people.
Yes. There's some disconnect here. Having anti-dumping duties is absolutely wise, and once you demonstrate that there are subsidies, one must take punitive action. But what I cannot understand is a safeguard duty, where you tend to put a duty on everybody, irrespective of whether they subsidize the production or not. And that's what the EU has done. And I think that's where this is kind of a double standard. That on the one hand, you're talking of multilateralism, you're talking of free markets, you want to look at Michael Porter's theory of comparative advantages, let the best man win. And at the end of the day, you say, oh, but we have capacity in steel, we've got to protect our steel industry. So we won't take steel even from those who do not indulge in any unfair trade practices. And then Mahatma Gandhi had very rightly said, an eye for an eye will make the whole world blind. So you stop steel from another country, the other country stops automobiles from your country, and then the process will keep going back and forth. And I don't think that's going to be a great help to globalization.
Can I shortly answer that? Yeah, you're totally right. But when you start with US saying the steel cannot come, the steel from India, from China, from everywhere cannot come to the US. If at the end you don't say, well, in the European Commission, some steel can come, but at the level that we had before, because otherwise all the steel that were going to the US will come to Europe, And as you know, Europe has decided to say up to 15% of consumption, the export can come. But before that, beyond that, you have to pay a tariff. So it's not that you stop; you have just to pay the tariff. So I'm not a protective person. Absolutely, I'm not in favor of protectionism. But this is exactly what the minister was saying. When you start with a move, and then you have to protect yourself, and then the other is protecting himself. So that's a mess. But
which is why
where we are.
Sorry, Emma, to interrupt, which is why I think that there's a sort of defeatism a bit in the world of trade ministers. It feels to me a bit at the moment that the rules-based order is falling apart and all of that goes up. Still, 72% of world trade is done under WTO rules, and I think it's really important that what the EU has done in relation to EU must abide by WTO rules, and just as we will, I think we need some WTO reform so that it fits for the 21st century rather than for 50, 60 years ago, but I don't think we should be abandoning rules-based, because in the end, deals are rules-based.
We can't, actually, because we talk about steel, and that's greatly important, particularly for the automotive, but also for the aerospace industry. We should talk a little bit more about tech as well.
Right.
Yes.
And particularly around the area of AI and mutual dependencies or interdependencies, because I think this is widely underestimated. We completely ignore the climate change. We completely ignore the challenges related to new technologies at the moment. So whilst everybody is overhyping this total, decoupling story and the world collapses, I'm still hopeful that even the most, let's say, aggressive government when it comes to trade, and even the most aggressive and imperial government when it comes to brutal warfare like Russia, ultimately has some basic understanding that there are some global needs for collaboration and cooperation. And as you quite rightly said, so far the WTO is 70+% still. And in regards to AI, for instance, and future challenges related to AI, there also needs to be global, communication, talk, and agreement. And this is only one aspect. There are plenty of others. So the tech element needs to be discussed here as well in this context.
And are you speaking to governments about that, how to think about that?
Absolutely.
Because I'm sure for EU policymakers, they want industrial autonomy here, but you said there's still interdependence across the entire global system. And how do you balance that, therefore?
Well, it's always part of the discussions. For instance, I was in India and I spent 1 week there, and I was completely blown away by the level of excellence, engineering excellence, quality in India. For Airbus, India is a strategic long-term partner. And part of the discussions was not only how can you make things cheaper for us, but actually how can we make things better by leveraging the capabilities of Indian technology and the tech talents there. It was part of the discussions how to evolve the partnership with India. And by the way, I think the situation offers unique opportunities for Europe. For instance, building as Europe a partnership with India. In the past, it was always fragmented. India never looked at, if I'm not mistaken, Europe as a whole. They looked at individual countries. Now Europe as a whole has a voice, and that was largely driven by the latest geopolitical developments. And last point, I think Europe has a unique opportunity in some high technologies, because we talk too much of past technologies. We must talk more about the high technologies going forward, i.e. in space. 2 nights ago, we signed a deal between Thales, Leonardo, and Airbus to create one of the world-leading space companies. It's a long way to go, I admit that. It's complicated, it may not be super speedy, but it will eventually have the strength to develop the latest technologies and to be industrial scale to eventually compete with Starlink and Elon Musk's constellation. That's something Europe needs badly. So let's talk a little bit more about what is the future rather than, how are we messing around with, some tariffs and stuff.
Especially if we manage to get vertical liftoff in Shetland, which would be the first place in Europe.
I would love to have more launch bases because we are,
It's crazy that the only European place is 3,800 miles away. Yes.
2 things are missing. One is we have no locations really with energy supply for data centers of the future, to train and do the inference modeling, train our AI models, plus we don't have enough launch pads.
Yeah.
So,
Larry, I think what
one second, just before we leave that point, Minister. So this is only an MOU, still needs regulatory approval. What are you telling regulators why they need to make sure this goes ahead?
Because it's completely crazy to look inward in Europe as we did in the past for antitrust. Whilst we loved ourselves, regulating ourselves from AI to antitrust to ensure that there is no dominant and strong global player in Europe. Take Siemens Alstom, for example. Now is the time. Because if we don't do it now, we can kiss our space independence goodbye forever. Right? We are completely dependent on one monopoly in so-called LEO, low Earth orbit constellations. That's a monopoly internet access. Thank you very much. If Europe doesn't understand that now and doesn't build its own constellation called IRIS-2 or whatever you want to call it, gets industrial capabilities for that, let's kiss it goodbye. I mean, this is the most strategic topic. That's why I believe there is reason, even in Brussels.
Yeah, and I would just add in, if there's one thing we have learned from Ukraine, it is that you cannot dominate, you cannot have dominion over the land if you haven't got dominion in space as well.
Of course.
So we have to get this right.
It's for military.
What I was only saying is what René said raises a very good point. We shouldn't be looking at trade or trade deals in a very short-term context. It's not about what's going to happen in the next 6 months or whether you can sell steel to America or whether you can sell automobiles to India for the next 2 or 3 years. Trade deals are for a longer duration. Trade deals are not only about tariffs, it's not only about access of goods or services, it's also about trust, it's also about relationships. Yeah. It's a demonstration to businesses that you can work with between both countries and trust businesses to prosper, businesses to be protected, businesses to get opportunities and a fair deal in a rule of law, not necessarily WTO, but also with the rule of law in democracies that we all work in. So I think trade deals in a longer context have far more than just tariffs. And we are just too focused on current day issues and tariffs.
Big time.
Yes.
It's how to regulate or how to ensure that technologies we're inventing can still be managed for the greater good of mankind.
Yeah.
And there is a real threat at the moment that this is getting completely lost in this geopolitical, skirmishes or struggles. And AI, for instance, needs a global framework. It cannot be that Europe regulates itself to death, whilst nations with a different, let's say, lesser scrupulous mindset use AI for purposes which we all don't want to see being deployed. Yeah.
Ola, do you have similar concerns?
To reflect on that, and especially also what René picked up here with the digital side of things. Usually when we talk about trade, we concentrate on the physical products.
Yep.
But there is, of course, a digital product as well.
Correct.
that you cannot touch it.
Yeah.
To start with the physical product, and I was inspired by what you said. Please, regulators, don't forget two things. One, what drove all that global growth, wealth creation, and taking people out of poverty? China is, of course, the biggest example, but not the only example. It was actually opening up markets. It's fully legitimate to talk about the level playing field, the way a market should work. It should be a level playing field for the market participants. So that discussion is necessary, but when it crosses the border of going into just blatant protectionism, it goes too far. So the level playing field, yes. Protectionism, no. If the goal is to grow the overall pie, and then you start fighting for who gets what piece of it. And in that context, with speed, the speed of the entrepreneurial mind is incredibly fast. Even if I go back to the history of our company, in 1886, Gottlieb Daimler invented the car. In 1898, he was doing business in the United States.
2 years later.
12 years later. Yeah, 12 years later. And think about what the world looked like then. And the invention had just been invented. Yeah, so I'm sure he thought Germany was a great market, maybe France, maybe the UK, whatever. But he went, that entrepreneurial mind, you can never stop that. You can never stop that, and it will be quick. Now over to the digital world, a reflection. If you are a global company, Mercedes-Benz is a global company, and you have an R&D footprint in Europe, for us, of course, our home is Germany. In the United States, we're in Silicon Valley since 25, 30 years. Our second biggest R&D center is in Bangalore in India, been there for 25 plus years. We are massively expanding our R&D activities in China with the innovation cluster there. You must be there if you want to be in the game. You cannot stop those engineers from talking to each other. No. You won't. No. Which means you co-learn around the clock all the time. Yep. What you can do, and unfortunately it's being done, the software that we developed for autonomous drive in China is done with a Chinese partner because the Chinese decided, for better or for worse, to create their own digital ecosystem. They're now trying to take that into the world, whereas the rest of the world was dominated by, let's call it the American lead, not just the Americans, but mainly the Americans. So indeed, we do double engineering unnecessarily so, but the thought between the minds that invent the invention is still shared. Yeah. Even if you digitally try to insulate yourself, you cannot stop thought and you cannot stop entrepreneurial mindset and speed.
So Ola, based on that, how do you stay competitive in an era of what she calls weaponized trade, when you have major competitors like BYD, who are becoming a very big player in EVs, or Toyota, and you're this globalized company with these R&D centers all over, and you need all these markets?
Well, the old saying, if you can't beat them, join them. You definitely go where the action is, and you have to tap into the talent pool. There's no way around that. I mean, we will be the soul of the companies. We have this German soul, obviously, and the entrepreneurship and the precision and the quality thinking and all those things. We will not cast away that DNA. That is our brand. But we are so many decades away from just going from Germany into the world. I mean, that is ancient history now. You have to embrace the new talent around the world. And when we met yesterday, I was thinking, every time I go to Bangalore and I come back there, I'm twice as energized as before I came. And you just go like, wow, yeah, you meet somebody who speaks fluent German, and I go like, where did you study in Germany? And the person says, I've never been to Germany.
Wow.
And you go like, where that intrinsic motivation, I want more of that. And we will go to where that is.
Same for Airbus, I'd say. I mean, we have European roots, but we are a global company, and we do a lot of local for local. We support India in its strategy and Make in India strategy. We try to partner very closely with local supply chain, and not only suppliers, but co-developers of components and so forth. We even built some planes like the C-295 in India. We have a final assembly line. We do the same in China. We have several locations. We produce in the US, so we have to do that. Otherwise, this new world order is against us. And if we can't embrace that, I think our business won't be global anymore. But we're doing this.
You're actually very bullish on India, generally.
I'm very bullish on India.
Do you think it will surpass China?
That's for him to answer. I think the ambition, which I sensed,
I'll tell you
the ambition on the entrepreneurial level was beyond what I heard everywhere in the world before on the entrepreneurial level lately, because they're coming from a position which is there's lots to catch up still. Right? If you think about GDP per capita, etc. But everyone I spoke to had a massive ambition, but not only that, excellent education and super good engineering.
I think the important issue is also age. We have a demographic dividend. Our average age is only 28
years, yeah.
Which you won't find in many other parts of the world, except, of course, Africa. Now, that young person now connected with the internet, and we have 1 billion internet users there, is very aspirational. That aspiration is driving him to work harder, is driving him to adopt new technologies, new languages, new countries. I think one must also recognize India's economy, while it may seem it's only a $4 trillion economy, on a purchasing power parity is already at 15 trillion. So the speed with which we'll be able to catch up, the speed with which we'll be able to grow, is there for us to capture. Rising wages, better living conditions, better quality of life. These aspirations are driving people's ambitions, people's effort. And I suspect going forward, just as in the last 4 years we were the fastest growing large economy, I see that continuing for at least 20, 25 years in the future. And it's not a question of whether you surpass one or the other. It's a question of whether you give a good quality of life to your people. Good education, good housing, take care of their needs, and continue to maintain your traditions. So any country which forgoes its culture, its heritage, can never succeed. And that's something we are very proud of. For us, it's development as much as it is our history, our culture, and our traditional value systems.
So direct question.
Let's not forget one thing when I hear that. It's not an either or from a business point of view. It's an and.
It's and, not either or.
Yeah.
It's an and if you take a mature, stable market like Europe for us, with the right policies, mind you, of course we can grow in Europe. And if it's not so much volume growth, it can still be revenue growth and qualitative growth because you have a more sophisticated product.
And a global market.
And then India will add both volume growth and quality growth. So it is an and game, it's not zero-sum.
I'm slightly more skeptical about this culture line. We're still getting over the invasion by the Normans 1,000 years ago.
We are getting over the British.
You and us both.
Well, but it's the truth, isn't it, that 100 years ago, if you wanted to launch a global brand, it would take you 25 years.
Yeah.
Whereas now you can do it in, well, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years, if you're lucky, you know. And we know, because the UK is the second biggest, perhaps soon the biggest exporter of advertising services. We know that that is a growing market as well, and anybody who only thinks about their own national market is going to be in trouble. One of my anxieties, to go back to the AI point, is about how do you make sure that you have protected your intellectual property in that, whether you're talking about patents or you're talking about copyright, I don't mind, but...
The data.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, look, I mean, hopefully eventually it's mostly open source, because I personally think it's very dangerous if it's in the hands of a few. So the core technologies, but then the training the models and, you know, having the industry-specific data, the stuff which an engineering company works on very specifically, like Indian or European or whatever. They train their models and they build data, and the learnings from that should be, in my view, you know, what the future value driver is, and that needs to be somewhat.
But I think we have to be careful about where we end up.
I understand your concern. For instance, when you work with companies like Palantir or so, how can it be ensured that the data are your data? I do think personally, I think it's a little overhyped in public here in Germany, for instance, the anxiety against companies like Palantir. Personally, I think they're more useful, and they should be, you know, received with a bit more open mind, because they have concepts to make sure you can protect your data. That's my personal.
So I think data adequacy agreements need to be part of this whole equation as well.
That's correct.
Between different countries, so the different countries understand how they're using data from one country to another.
That's exactly right.
But I'm still mystified by when you rent a car and you land at the airport, why every country seems to have a completely different system for verifying who you are. Why is that the most difficult transaction that we ever engage in our lives, hiring a car?
What's that?
Hiring a car.
I'm not in that business. You should ask him.
He just makes the cars. He doesn't hire them.
I will talk to our rental partners about that.
And why is there a different parking app in every single city in every part of the world? Why can't there be one big issue?
Of course, market economy is chaotic, and you will have many market participants and all that, and the other, and the best ones will win. But on the topic of intellectual property, and of course respecting contract law and all those things that are the basics for a functioning market economy, I think it's also, as you said, maybe a little bit overhyped.
Yes.
Of course, we file patents, no question. Yeah, and mostly patents are respected. Sometimes actors try to violate patents, and you end up in legal disputes and this, that, and the other. But even if I would hand all the drawings of our most sophisticated S-Class to every competitor around the world, if I would just open up my little treasure chest here and hand them the blueprints, so what? Yeah. That is not what's going on right now.
They can't build it, even if you gave them the drawings?
Even if they can build it, that's yesterday. It is the patent that has not yet been filed, that is in the mind of the engineer, that we are discussing in the product creation process, which is the most valuable intellectual property for us. So you're always on the cycle, one ahead of what is actually in your patent box.
Yeah,
you have to push forward like crazy. So the biggest theft that you could make from one competitor to the other is probably to take the people.
It's the talent.
The talent,
not necessarily the
for goods, but not for services.
And services may be...
It's very different.
Yeah, services may be different. Services may be different.
René, you want to add?
No, he's right. Ola's right, but it depends on the cycles, right? If in the car industry, the development cycles have shortened now to, what is it, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years even. Yeah. So it's a short cycle. From the aviation industry, you have longer cycles. So you really don't want to lose, you know, the core knowledge and IP and so on. But principally speaking, he's right. The talent, the few talents,
right,
are the strategic differentiator going forward, as long as they cannot be replaced by AI.
It's so long, you don't have delivery slots for the next few years, right?
What?
For new aircraft.
Well, single aisle, that's true. The order book is very full for probably 7-8 years or so. Yeah, true.
So if somebody were to get the drawings, then that would be devastating.
Nah. That's not a headline I'm going to produce here.
I tried.
He's a good politician. Yeah. Can I just do one other area? So we've obviously talked quite a bit about how important the rules-based order is and so on. But there's another part of this, which is the need for deregulation in so many countries in the world, because we might have come up with perfectly sensible ideas to regulate this, that, or the other. But then suddenly when you're in an FTA discussion, you go, you know what? This feels remarkably like a protectionist measure in the end. And sometimes that's down to the fact that so much stuff is still done on paper by so many governments around the world. I cannot tell you how many times people come knocking on my door and they go, could you just ring such and such a government and say, can we please have the license paper signed now for such and such a business? I think the whole digitization process for government and deregulation is a real challenge for the European Union, a real challenge.
I agree with that.
But the only chance we have to ever get deregulated is when the pressure is high. And I think
now pressure is very high.
And now the pressure is very high.
If it's not high now,
it will never be.
This crisis must not be
Larry,
wasted.
think about it.
But still it's difficult, huh? It's difficult. We still have a lot of problems in Europe to go really strongly towards deregulation. Huh? There have been this omnibus, but it's not enough. I think we should try to do something like, you start from scratch. So you just, because what we see with the Commission now is valuable, because they start to, say, okay, this regulation is not fine, maybe we postpone the starting. But if a regulation is not fine, you have to cut it. It has to be dead.
Right.
While we are just doing, maybe we postpone or we do some small changes. So as I said, now the pressure is so strong.
Larry,
I think we should do much more. And maybe also as business, our voice is already strong, but maybe we should be even stronger.
It's not only business,
the most
it's
important
hurting
thing.
global trade also. So because of all these regulations, I suspect Europe is going to have an existential problem for their businesses. Their infrastructure is going to get costlier. Their automobiles and planes are going to get costlier. Their cost of living will be difficult to manage. And they'll be living in a cocoon, while other trading partners will be trading around the world with each other. And Europe will be left holding the can that we've got 73 regulations, which I have last counted, between European Union and the States. 73 regulations. It's nearly impossible to ever fulfill all the paperwork and the requirements and the additional tax burden. And in a way, they're seeking to hyphenate too many issues. Trade is about trade. Why are we hyphenating too many issues along with trade? We are actually messing up the free trade.
So, Minister Goyal, as an outsider looking in, you think European Union needs Elon Musk and Doge to break down the regulations?
I think Emma will do a good job.
Because Emma has a lot of frustrations, and I wanted to get to that before we take questions. You seem like you have some frustrations with the current EU regulations and how slow it's moving.
Yes, because some regulation is needed. We don't want to be in a scenario where there is no regulation, everybody does what he wants. No, this is not the way things have to be done. But what we see is that there are too many regulations. Look, for example, at the regulation on environmental, the due diligence, the CSRD. So there are a lot of regulation that goes beyond the fact that you have anyway to respect and to protect your citizen, or also you try to have better situation in countries where you work. But this is going too far. Probably some people, sometimes it looks to me that the people who thinks about this regulation are not on the side. They don't know exactly what's going on in the business, in life. So, but as I said, it's too slow. Too slow. And sometimes also we have to say this is not only coming from the Commission. Sometimes, when we, for example, we talk about trying to add less regulation in the single market, sometimes are also national governments that to protect their own maybe constituency, they want to stick with some regulation that is completely unnecessary. There is this, the IMF is saying that all the internal barriers in the single markets are more or less 45% of tariffs. on goods and 100% of tariffs on services. So I think we should really do very fast and very clear. But as I said, it's not only, doing something a little bit different, but staying in the same, situation, but really cut it. And another thing which I wanted to say that is also why sometimes Europe, you have too many regulation, is that, and going back to what they said, we are not so open to innovation. No? We have a lot of innovation, our company is fantastic, but you have always this kind of precautionary, principle where you try to stop and to regulate an innovation and new research, also something that is disrupted before it comes. I think you should, leave the companies, go innovation, go, research, and then if there is something that is wrong, you regulate ex post. And this has to be changed. It's a kind of cultural things.
Having started this thing about regulation, can I just add that I think sometimes regulation can facilitate good business if you put regulation at the purpose of just one example, which I think I'm right on, but if I'm wrong, I apologize to everybody, which is that at the beginning of mobile telephony, the EU decided to regulate standards, enforce standards, and it meant that you could actually text from one kind of mobile phone to another kind of mobile phone in the EU, but the US refused to, and consequently you couldn't. Now, it seems completely inconceivable that you wouldn't have that interoperability, but sometimes regulation works. And of course, my point about regulation is self-critical to the UK. I mean, we have a whole series of regulations. Of course, sometimes you want to, the water industry and things like that, but it has to be put at the purpose of...
You provoked me.
Okay, René, go for it.
I have to say this. I used to work for Deutsche Telekom before, okay? So I'm a mobile guy by background.
Have I got it wrong?
Huh? Well, the EU was extremely bad in regulating the telecommunications sector because it ensured that there are still more than 100 players around. Yes. And a completely fragmented market, and it's super capital intense. And all the regulation in the EU led to us for a long time, being extremely handcuffed. But now gradually, it's being understood that there needs to be a different market structure, and regulation, I think, gets more and more, hopefully soon, reasonable. But apart from that, I think one of the biggest issues we have is the low adoption of AI in European companies versus other areas in the world. The low adoption of wireless technology and wireless usage, like in India, where Europe has a few gigabytes per month per user, in India, with a totally different, demographics, has like 5 times or 10 times more, and that also tells you a story.
At only 7% of the cost of Europe. And our data is 7% of the cost of data in Europe.
Not in Deutsche Telekom, that's very cheap here. But apart from that, seriously, the anti-regulation frenzy in Europe is crazy, and this needs to be stopped. Because, for instance, in AI, there's a regulatory framework, for those of you who have read it, it's like more than 100 pages, plus another 100 pages in the appendix. Not only the developers, good developers mostly handle it, large companies can manage, like Mercedes or us. But the small and the mid-sized companies, they're getting scared. How can I deploy it? Where am I non-compliant, etc.? So there needs to be more pragmatism and business understanding at the regulatory level. The good news is, I think the wake-up call has been sounded. I think the pressure is high enough for now to change, and I'm optimistic that we will change.
All right, I want to take some questions, but can I just defend EU regulations for 1 second? As an outsider, they forced Apple to give us USB-C chargers,
yes,
which they were not going to give us, and now we can charge with Android devices.
And you just think, how on earth did we get to a position where somebody was allowed to make you buy a new charger every year?
Yes, so thank you to the EU for making that possible.
Small wins, small wins.
Small wins, we'll take it. We have some young voices here that we're going to hear some questions from them. And then if we have time, we'll take some more from the audience. Please stand and let's hear your question. Introduce yourself. There's a microphone there, yes.
Hello, my name is Sophie, and I'm one of the young voices. Thank you very much for this very insightful panel. My question would be that given the weakening of multilateral institutions like the WTO, what forms of cooperation or new alliances do you see emerging to maintain our global stability in trade? Thank you.
All right, we'll take the other one from the young voices as well before we answer both.
Thank you so much for the session. I'm Anshika from India. I would like to know that we discussed a lot of issues where coming to consensus between multiple economies, be it US, Europe, India, China, UK, is becoming more difficult and difficult every day. So where are we going wrong? Why is it becoming so difficult to really negotiate and come to consensus these days? Thank you.
Is it that we have poorer negotiators compared to those we had in the past? She didn't want to say it, so I'm just completing the sentence. Thank you. Who wants to take any of them? Emma, yes.
On this second part,
yes.
You know, as we said in the past, the negotiation on, for example, on free trade was very long. You sit down, the European Union was down with a lot of papers saying that this is the content, and they have to go back and talk to the prime minister. So now it's completely changed, and you know, the real negotiation was on content. Yeah, was on, okay, I want this, I want to protect a little bit more this sector. This is not good. So it was. Now I think with the US, the situation is completely different. You know, as we said, it's very transactional. It's very, I'm strong, you are weak.
I have all the cards, you have no cards.
You have the cards, you don't have the cards. I want to win, so I win, you lose. It's very, you know, I'm very powerful, you are not. And sometimes the negotiation is not on content, it's on, you know, you like Bolsonaro, so I raised the 50% tariff. So, or today I saw that Mr. Trump decided to quit all the negotiation with Canada because I understand the Prime Minister talked about Reagan being against tariffs. So when you are in this situation, it's difficult. And in my opinion, this is Trump, so we have to understand this. And the European Union is not equipped to do that. And Mr. Trump wants another powerful guy, maybe it's better if it's a man, maybe if it's a big man, and to negotiate with him.
Or an Italian woman.
No, I don't think he like it. I don't think he like it. So, no, I'm kidding, but I think it's a completely new era, and so when you are in this situation, it's more difficult. But anyway, we have to adapt. I think Mr. Trump is not, you know, is a person that understands what's going on, he understands what market wants. So I think here's what it is, and maybe also I think European Union has to, to be a little bit more, more open to this new fund. And on the other point, just one moment, I think we should really, as been said here, maybe I think we have to stick on the fact that multilateral, WTO is still a value. So we don't have to say, okay, it's dead. No, let's continue to talk on that. Let's try to have reforms. But let's go on with free trade agreement on the long term. Let's have good cooperation among companies, which I think is very important, can really push also governments to do better. Let's have maybe coalition for, if we talk about climate in a proper way, let's have at the table different countries. So I think that could be different way to continue to have, open market and good trade.
And as René pointed out, I think 74% of trade is still happening under the WTO rules, so it's not all fallen apart yet. Anybody want to answer?
But maybe it needs a reform. Every team sport needs rules. You need to have a referee. If it's a little bit stuck, maybe you need to take a look at it and maybe reform WTO. And of course, if one player decides not to play by the rules, of course, then you have a disruption there. But that doesn't mean that you should abandon the rules for the sport.
No, right.
But it feels like it's in need of some kind of reform.
Definitely some form of reform, and I guess we'll be discussing this in Cameroon in March at the ministerial, and I hope we can come up with sensible reforms. But also, sometimes I hate to talk about coalitions in Germany, but I think a coalition of the willing sometimes, a plurilateral set of agreements is a good option as well. I'm really fascinated by the idea that the CPTPP might do a really good deal with the European Union or come to some kind of agreement, whatever that may be, because that will be a very significant. Then we need to think what we're going to do about India. But sorry, that sounded terribly patronising, which I know is a British tendency. And I absorb
It's
myself.
got a lot of historical...
I know. Can I tell you a story? I was once in the theatre, and there was a couple sitting in front of me who were having a terrible row. And just as the play was about to start, the woman turned to the man and said, "The worst of it is, you're so bloody patronising." And he kissed her on the forehead and said, "It's patronising, not patronising." Sorry.
Okay.
The only difference is the British keep talking. And assuming that they are in a particular sweet spot, we act.
Okay.
And our actions speak for themselves.
All right, let me take one question from this side before we wrap it up. We have 2 minutes. If you can give a quick question, we can get that answered. Because you're behind me, so I'm giving... No one here wants to ask a question? Okay, cool. Let's go. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I'm Yan Shaohua, Associate Professor of European Studies from Fudan University in Shanghai. I would like to echo Mr. Obermann's point. You mentioned that geopolitical development could actually drive positive changes in the European Union. So I think in this sense, pressure from the US, including China, could actually kind of provide the stimulus for reforms that is likely badly needed in the European Union.
Yeah.
So one change I'd like to see is whether there's going to be more and more European champions in the industry. I would like to see whether you foresee more and more Airbus and Mercedes-Benz in the future.
Yeah, thank you. To be specific, rather than making the answer too broad in the interest of time, a couple of high technologies where I think we have opportunities, and it may be a far-reaching out statement here, but I personally think there is opportunity in fusion technology, which is one of the biggest issues which we need to resolve, is how to get to clean energy. Even though it's a bit dismissed for the moment, but I do think Europe has developed some strength in certain environmental technologies. I also think we have good research, at least promising research at this point in time on quantum, which we should not this time please mess and let all the expertise go and get entrepreneurial activities elsewhere. We should really foster on creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem around that and transfer from science into business. And I know it sounds completely bizarre when I say it at this point in time, but 10 years down the road, I think we're much stronger also in some important defense technologies.
All right.
And the spillover effect.
Can I add one aspect to that? Because I think
I'm
really
monopolizing here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, just one aspect to this. If you look at the history of global champions, quite often the global champions arise from a very strong position in their home market, and then they go into the world. So if we want to increase the likelihood of more European global champions, as Europe, I would do two things. I would complete the single market, and I would do a capital union market, so that we actually have a real market of 440 million. I would like the UK to come back if it's possible. And the second thing I would do is to change our policies to promote economic growth. Because that United States and China are trying to do in their different ways, whereas we have kind of come off the main road and we have become a low growth area. If we increase growth and complete the single market, we will have bigger bases and a bigger business base here to be a champion, to then be a global champion.
All right.
I agree.
We are out of time. Thank you, Professor, and thank you to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. This has been fantastic. I think we solved trade on this table.
Yeah.
So please.
And the European Union has got rid of all regulations.
And the European Union has dropped all regulations.
And India is still talking.
And India, please give them a big round of applause. They've been fantastic. Thank you so much. The next session will begin here in 15 minutes, so you can take a break or come back. Next one in 15 minutes. Thanks a lot.